Hello. Good evening. I hope everyone can hear me. Yeah, sorry, I had a little tick in with my system and trying to get it sorted out. But I'm afraid again. Um, yeah, Rafiq, this is Mr. Jude. How are you, Rafiq? Oh, okay, that's great. Um, I've been having trouble lately with my system, and I don't know. I think I have to get an IT person to come check my system. Anyway, there was a case which we were supposed to talk about, discuss today. I don't know if everyone had a copy of the case. Hello? Okay, that's fine. Um, on Wednesday we had a class, but most of you were not present. I don't know what happened or what didn't happen. Um, but I suppose you went through the short, in fact, very brief case the coordinator sent to you. Did you have copy of the case? Okay, great. That was very short, very brief, and I didn't want to make it very complicated and difficult. So I decided to choose a very brief case. Okay, Theo, I understand. Well, I'm just going to be very brief what we discussed last week. Um, we looked at the different barriers to ethical organization. I suppose you're already taken um, a, a subject on business ethics with one of the teachers. I don't know if the teacher has started already, but the case I wanted us to talk about has a lot to do with um, business ethics. So that is why I decided for us to have a review in a very different way, probably a little bit different from what the teacher has given you if he has started already. And so we can be able to talk about the case. So did everybody read the case? Okay, Theo did, George did. Um, so can you give me a summary of the case? What is the case talking about? Just a summary of the case, so I can have an idea or just the flavor of it. Yeah, correct. Double your money. That is the case. I sent double your money. So what's the case talking about? Just a brief summary before I go into the discussion of the case. Okay, Rafik says we need to earn more money. Well, I'm talking about the case I sent Rafik. Everybody needs to earn money. That's true. But the case I sent, are you saying the case says we need to earn more money, or what is it exactly you're saying? Okay, Okay, PO says some of the clients paid in twice by mistake and the company doesn't want to return it. Okay, George says whether we should pay back them or not. Okay. Now, before we go to the case, I just want to have a kind of a review of what we did last week. So we should be able to discuss the case in a more appropriate way. Last time we talked about business ethics, and I'm going to be very brief about it. And we said companies are spending huge amount of money on training, ethics, and I'm just going to go back a little bit. Um, just give me a minute. I think I'm having trouble with the file. Maybe I should cancel the file and then load it again. Okay, we looked at what business ethics is, but I want us to start from the five barriers. Now, before that, let me ask the same question I asked on Wednesday. Why do you think there is a lot of unethical behavior in most organizations around the world? What is the cause of unethical behavior, unethical practices, and stuff like that? From your own experience, what do you think is the cause, or what are the causes of unethical behavior? Okay, Theo says when the money comes, the top priority is uh, might happen. I didn't quite catch that, Theo. Um, Now, everyone has an experience, I'm sure, one or two, of unethical behavior. So New Francis says to gain maximum profit for the company, okay, that's the cause of unethical. But how does it cause unethical behavior? And George says how to make more money. Okay, um, you're trying to look at the case and coining it and coming up with something, George. That's very smart. Yes, I'm waiting for your. Okay, Pio says when the top management fails in setting a proper vision, the others may fail. Okay, that is pointing at the top management. And anyway, while I know you've got a lot of experience, and now the problem is how to put your experience in a very simple or few words, if I might say. Now, let's look at, there are 5 barriers to ethical organization. That is to say, there are 5, maybe more anyway, but we're going to look at 5 very important barriers. The things that stop, promote kind of unethical behavior. So even the best intended executives are often unaware of their own or their employees' unethical behavior. Now, there is one thing I'd like us to be very careful about, and let's see what Rahul says, how to pull out maximum capacity of employees. Is that a cause of unethical behavior? Maybe you're going to throw more light on that. I'm sure, Rahul, you should be looking at it from an angle. I am not looking at it, so maybe if you throw a little bit more light, I might be able to follow. But let's in the meantime, let's just look at the screen together and see these 5 barriers. I'm going to explain them very briefly. I did this in the previous class. I'm just going to do it now, so we are all vibrating at the same frequency. Now, the first barrier is ill-conceived goals. I asked the coordinator to send some notes to you all some few days back before the last class. I don't know if you all had copies of it. Now, ill-conceived goals is when your intention to do business is negative. Maybe you want to extort money from people. First of all, the objective of the organization or of the business is negative, is bad. Maybe people are suffering and you think this is a wonderful opportunity to make some money out of these people. That's an ill-conceived goal. And there are lots of other examples when the objective of the business or the organization is negative. We're going to look at that in detail. Probably if you go through the notes I sent to you, you'll be able to have more light shed on that. The next thing is motivated blindness. Now, motivated blindness is when you refuse to see, because of some gain. You're gaining something, and it makes you pretend not to see the negative side of what is happening. I'm going to explain a little bit more. There is a table in which I copied anyway, and then everything is properly explained. The next is indirect blindness. Many people don't want to take responsibility for their actions, especially when it comes to outsourcing. I'm sure you've heard about it. The radio, you've watched it on TV, how lots of companies outsource their products, and other companies, for example, the garment industry. We've heard about what's happening in Bangladesh. We've heard about what's happening in India, and most of the giant companies, they give this and they outsource these products to other companies, and these companies are ill-treating, using other people as slaves, and then these people don't want to care about. And when it comes to the pharmaceutical company, in the case, they wanted to increase the price of the cancer drug. But again, they didn't want to do that directly, so people don't say, hey, that's not good. So they decided to outsource and give the right to a different company to do it for them. And that is a kind of an indirect blindness. So they don't take responsibility for what's negative. So they push the negative things because they don't want to do it, but they want someone else to do it on their behalf. And then there is the slippery slope. This is some kind of um, unethical practice that starts gradually and it grows. Um, and we're going to see that in the case. Um, for example, something starts very little. Maybe you check the accounts and there is some few hundred dirhams that is not accountable. And then you say, okay, anyway, it's just little, so we can forget about it. Now, these little things, keep growing and then it becomes something big. So that is a slippery slope. And the last one is overvaluing outcome. And this is very common in many companies. They value outcome and they don't want to know how you got the result. They just want to have good results. They want to have the cash coming in. They want to have, the income. And once they have it, the companies don't really care about how maybe sales executives, what is it they're doing out there to get the money. But as long as they are achieving their targets, the company is satisfied. And in many situations, if you're a doctor, for example, a medical doctor, and then you try something, you experiment a drug on a patient without following the normal procedure, and if the patient responds positively, people are going to hail you. They're going to say you're a wonderful person, you're great, because you experimented, though you didn't follow the normal procedure, but the results were outstanding. The results were great, and the patients recovered. Whereas if another doctor did the same thing, experimenting on patients with a drug without following the normal procedure, if the results turn out to be negative, maybe the patients die or it results to new complications, that doctor will be penalized in some instances. But not in every situation anyway, but in more advanced and um, structured system, even if the results are good, the doctor is still going to be questioned. Okay, now that we've seen the 5 barriers, these are the 5 causes of unethical behavior in companies, in organizations, and we're going to explore it and see how it fits in the case. Now, when you read the case, where do you think the case falls? Is it ill-conceived goals? Is it motivated blindness? Is it indirect blindness? Is it a slippery slope? Is it overhalting outcome? Where do you think the case falls? Slippery slope. George says slippery slope. So why do you say slippery slope, George? And Pio says overvaluing outcome, and John says unwanted money came little and little. Okay. Um, Pio says overvaluing outcome. Pio, can you defend that? What makes you say overvaluing outcome? And Francis says indirect blindness. Francis, why do you say indirect blindness? Okay, having known the money is excess, I'm sure, not returning or informing again and again. Okay, that's indirect blindness. It's quite interesting. I'm getting a lot of Theo is trying to defend his point as well over valuing outcome. He says because the money I counted twice for the same invoice is wrong and companies should not accept it. Okay, but Theo, are you sure that it is the company that is accepting it, or it's an individual who is accepting it? That's the big question. Now, if you didn't read the case very well, it's going to be very difficult to answer this question. It might appear a very simple question, but from your response, you know, from your responses, I think it isn't, and I have to explain a little bit more. And Theo says the senior management. Okay. Again, senior management, something is missing here. Just take a look at it again from a new angle, maybe. And George trying to add more. It says, in the beginning, companies not aware of this. That's true. Okay, let me throw a little bit more light on the whole thing, because this is very important, because it's going to help you to be able to decide the course of a particular unethical behavior in an organization or business. So let's pay a little bit more attention. Now, if you look at the screen again, now companies have poured time and money into ethical training and compliance programs, but unethical behavior in business is nevertheless widespread. You're going to see this almost everywhere. That's because cognitive biases and that is rational biases and organizational system blind managers to unethical behavior, whether their own or that of others. Now, you might not be the one as the manager who is unethical, but you're blind to see what other people are doing, which is unethical. And Theo says, I think it is an ill-conceived goal as well. Okay, let's finish these two slides, and then I'm going to go back to the same questions, and let's see if our answers are going to remain the same. All these serves to derail even the best intentioned managers. Some managers are caught in the practice of unethical things, not intentional, some of them anyway, but some are really intentional in what they do. They do it intentionally. Now let me explain those 5 points again in detail. Now, when I say ill-conceived goals, I mean goals that reward unethical behavior. That is another way to look at it. For example, if the manager rewards people for unethical behavior, then that is an ill-conceived goal. Now, I'm not saying all managers are going to say, hey, you're doing a great job, cheating, that's fine, so have some bonus. That's not it. It's difficult to see it, in black and white. But there are certain things that managers encourage without knowing that these things are pushing employees to be very unethical. Let me take an example. What kind of example can I use? Let's take sales, because most of these things come around sales. Not all anyway, but some. Now, if a sales organization, an organization that has to do with a lot of sales, if they reward employees for achieving their target, and then they say there's best employee of the month, there's best employee of the quarter of a year, and stuff like that, without rewarding employees for other issues like quality of service, feedback, and these companies, these managers are encouraging these employees to do whatever it takes to just get the money coming in. So indirectly, they are rewarding unethical behavior as well, without knowing that this is what they are doing. And some of these sales executives, they lie to customers and clients just because they want to get them to buy the product. And at the end of the day, there is more problem coming in. So, but some organizations, they look at it very short term. So let's go to the next, conflicts of interest. That is motivated blindness. Now, motivated blindness is about conflict of interest that motivates people to ignore bad behavior when they have something to lose by recognizing it. Let me take an example, the same example I used last time. Maybe you're a new regional manager, or you're a new branch manager, and the branch has a target. Now, your employees are doing things that are not very, very ethical. But again, your interest is that if you achieve your target, you might be promoted to maybe regional manager. Now, because you have something to lose, if you stop your employee or your staff from doing things that are not correct, you might not be able to achieve the target, and you will not get promoted. That is what you think. So what you do is, because you're going to lose something if you try to be strict in the way the employees work, you're motivated to be blind to what they're doing. They're doing things that are not good, but you don't want to condemn these things because you know you're going to lose, or you have something to lose. So that's an example. And in the notes that I sent to you, there is also another example that supports that. And the third point is indirect blindness. Now, this is a tendency to overlook dirty work that's been outsourced to others. For example, dumping or cleaning waste, from toxic companies, as companies that produce toxic material. Maybe these companies don't want to dump the waste themselves and let the whole world say, okay, no, you are dumping the waste and it's not good. So what they do, they can outsource to a different company to deal with that. And then they turn a blind eye to whatever these companies are doing. So this is indirect blindness. They don't want to get the blame. They don't want to be looked at as a bad company, or a company that doesn't care about the environment. They push it to some other company to handle. And then the next is the slippery slope. There is an inability to notice when behavior deteriorates gradually. So things are changing gradually, and then you're not able to notice it. And at the end of the day, these things become very big, and it becomes complex to deal with. And the last one, which is the overvaluing outcome. This is a tendency to overlook unethical decisions when the outcome is good. So you're only interested in the outcome. As long as the outcome is good, everything is good. So you don't care about the means. You only care about the end. So, but again, there's a saying that the ends does not justify the means. So I just used an example with a doctor experimenting. Okay. This is a table that summarizes everything, and from here we're going back to the short case which we're supposed to discuss today. Now, the first one is ill-conceived goals. Again, I'm going to take it. We set goals and incentives to promote a desired behavior, but they encourage a negative one. You get it? So some of these managers are not doing it consciously. So we're supposed to first of all find out if the manager is conscious, if he's aware or not, before we jump into conclusion. So some of these managers are not conscious. They are not aware of what they're doing, but they are the cause of unethical behavior in their organization, because they set goals and incentive plans, to promote a desired behavior, what they want, maybe productivity or maybe sales, but they encourage a negative one as well. And there is an example in the notes I sent. It says the pressure to maximize billable hours in accounting, consulting, and law firms leads to unconscious padding. And this, what is a solution? This is very important to everybody. What is the solution if there is a problem with, can everybody see my mouse? If the problem is ill-conceived goals, how do you solve this problem? So this is the solution. Now you brainstorm on intended consequences when devising goals and incentives. Now consider alternative goals that may be more important to reward. Now when you're making decisions as a manager, you have to consider a host of other issues as well. If you're promoting a particular behavior, you have to look at the possibility of that behavior, resulting to something else. So that is a solution to that. The next is motivated blindness. Now, what is motivated blindness? In the case, it's very clear. Well, not the case I gave you, but in the notes, I meant to say. Now, we overlook the unethical behavior of others when it's in our interest to remain ignorant. Now, the more you're ignorant, then the more you're gaining something out of it. But if you speak out, if you say this thing is not good, you're not gaining anything out of it. So this is something personal. You want to have some personal gain. So because there is some personal gain, then you try to be ignorant. You pretend to be ignorant of what is happening. Now, in the note, it talks about baseball officials failed to notice they had created conditions that encourage steroid use. So this is it. So when you increase this kind of motivated blindness, it has a lot of negative consequences. How do you resolve this particular issue? How do you solve an unethical practice as a result of motivated blindness? Now you have to root out conflicts of interest. Once you realize that there are some employees or their managers who have secondary agenda, they have personal interests coming into the whole organization, you have to uproot such people. Simply being aware of them doesn't necessarily reduce their negative effect on decision making. So these people have to be uprooted. They have to be laid out. The next is indirect blindness. You say we hold others less accountable for unethical behavior when it's carried out through third parties. So because we're not the one doing it, someone else is doing it, then we can let it go. So they are responsible, not us. But again, we are the one who wants to give them that opportunity to do it. So we are supposed to be accountable as well. And in the note, it talked about a drug company deflects attention from a price increase by selling rights to another company, which imposes the increase. So they don't want to be the ones to increase the price, but they want another company to do it. So they sell the right to a different company, and the company increases the price, and they're gaining something out of it. So that's indirect blindness. And how do you solve this kind of issues? And now these are just possible solutions. It doesn't mean that these are the ultimate solution. That's not it. But it's a possible solution to this problem. The solution to this, when handing off or outsourcing work, ask whether the assignment might invite unethical behavior and take ownership of the implication. The more we are reluctant to take ownership to this kind of implication, the more we can let anything happen. And the next is slippery slope. And we are less able to see others' unethical behavior when it develops gradually. For example, even if we go back home, maybe your kid, your child comes home a bit late, maybe 30 minutes late today, okay, just 30 minutes. Every day, 30 minutes, to get to a point is like 45 minutes, to get to a point is 1 hour, and stuff like that. Even when we go back to the business, an employee comes to the office 5 minutes late, okay, that's okay. 10 minutes late, that's okay. 15 minutes late, by the time you, 15 minutes every day, 15 minutes, it gets to a point when it becomes difficult to handle. So for example, in the note, it talks of authorities or auditors may be more likely to accept a client firm's questionable financial statement if infractions have occurred over time. There is a little problem, okay, you ignore it, and then there is another little problem, you ignore it, and over time, it becomes a very complex problem. So how do you solve this kind of unethical behavior that comes as a result of gradual, progression of a particular behavior? You have to be alert for even trivial, even very little unethical infractions and address them immediately. Now investigate whether a change in behavior has occurred. And the last one is overvaluing outcome. We give a pass to unethical behavior if the outcome is good. Now most companies do this. They don't want to care how you got the job done, but if the job is done and done properly and done very well, they give you a medal, they give you appreciation, they give you appraisal and stuff like that. They don't want to care about how the job gets done. And in this particular note, it says a researcher whose fraudulent clinical trial saves lives is considered more ethical than one whose fraudulent trial leads to death. So that's the same thing I was talking about. I'm using a doctor. If a researcher, fraudulently carries out a particular trial and is successful, now he gets the medal. And if it leads to death or it leads to some complication, then that's a problem. So how do we solve? Excuse me. How do we solve this kind of issue? We have to examine both good and bad decisions from their ethical implications. Now, reward solid decision processes, not just good outcome. If somebody follows the right procedure, that person needs to be rewarded, even if the outcome is not very good. And if somebody follows the wrong procedure, even if the outcome is good, that should not be praised. Okay, let's go back to the case. Then you ask the question again. The case we just read, where do you think the case falls? And you justify your answer. Okay, Pio says, I think it's an ill-conceived goal as well. Okay, that is what you said before, the explanation. Sadatu says motivated blindness. Okay. Pio says it's a mix of ill-conceived goal and overvaluing outcome. Anyone else? Can you defend it if you read the case? Can you defend your answers? I'm interested in the way you're going to defend your answers, please. And Francis says slippery slope. Okay. I think it's a little bit confusing for so many people. This note, you can also find this note available. You can download it. I think I made it public. And the previous note as well is made available. I think you can download it as well. I think this is just a simplification of the same note. So you can get the note of this particular business ethics. If you don't have a copy, you can ask the coordinator to send you a copy. I asked the coordinator to send a copy to everybody. I feel that something is a little bit not right because we keep talking about the same thing and we are not uniform. I think I've already had 3 answers and all of them are different. It means something needs to be done. So, and I have the impression that most people didn't go through the notes. Anyway, let's come back to the case. Now, those who read the case, okay, let's see what Pure says. You can see it goes. The company is not sending statements properly, and it's the failure of objective setting. Okay, that's justifying your point here. That's good. Saratu, can you justify your point as well? Francis, can you do the same? Everyone else, there's Safig, there's George, and there's Elaine. Oh, Rafiq says same as above. So you support what Pierre is saying. Okay. So Pierre, you have one vote. Okay. Francis says initially all companies let things go even if it comes to their notice because they are regular customers. Okay. Alien says same for me. It's a mix of all the points you explain. Okay. George says it is a mix of all. Okay. And Peel says and overvaluing outcome, the payment comes twice, and Fidel. And okay, there says let it be there because it is a mistake of the customers. Okay, now the question I want to ask you, if you were the accountant, can you continue to ignore this, overpayment without contacting the customers personally? Would you just stay quiet and listen to your manager, ignoring this overpayment and without contacting them personally? Now, is it sufficient that your boss has informed you that he has informed the respective customers? Is that sufficient to you? Now, how do you know that the financial director actually sent the letters to the customers? Okay, so I have to give a big one. It says, this is because the company, Rubymax, noticed that its clients are overpaying or rather double paying, but didn't take much action on it. In this case, it's for, I don't know. And where the mistake is eventually adding to their account in the case of customer underpayment or failure to make payment process. Now, Sarata, are you going to change the payment process or something? As Sunil says, I will make them aware through the statement of account and have meeting with their financial controller. And Pio says, proper statement of account. Saratu says action would have followed, okay, if you did that notification. And Joe says no, later auditors will find. As an accountant, you should explain the reason. Okay, you wanted to say favor, Saratu. Okay, I got it. Okay, that's very interesting. The points are shifting and they're changing a little bit. And now for the first of all, I don't know how the other companies don't even realize that they've made overpayment. That's something I don't know. It means the other company has a problem as well. Don't you think? Now, if you say you're not going to sit quiet, if you say you're going to send a statement, you're going to contact the client, now, who are the key parties who can influence or who will be affected by your decision? Who do you think are the key parties who might be affected by your decision? If you have to contact the clients and forward the account statement, who do you think are the parties who is going to be affected? The client will be affected. You're contacting the client, right, to tell them that they've made overpayment. So if you do this, who do you think is going to be, okay, both companies? Feel that's a very open statement. I'd like you to be more specific. Both companies, they're huge. There are people working there. Who do you think in these companies will be affected? Now, we know that every field has some ethical, fundamental ethical principles. If you go to accounts, what are the fundamental principles, ethical principles that have not been applied in this case? I'm sure there is something coming up from the other teachers on accounts, and well, I'm just going to give this because not everybody is specialized in accounts. There is integrity, there is objectivity, there is professional competence, and due care, because you're supposed to be very careful. There is confidentiality as well, and there is professional behavior. Now, these are the key ethical principles that were not observed in this case. And it's a little bit weird, don't you think so? Do you think your manager, the financial manager who is there, is going to be affected by a decision? Now, if you're the accountant and you decide to contact the other or the client, do you think your manager, your financial manager, the one who told you that they sent an account statement to this company, do you think that person will be affected? Do you think that person has a secondary agenda? Okay, he's doing his job by notifying the double payment, but was it checked? Do you think, Phil and all, do you think that you can notify a company that they've made double payment and then the company sits quiet? Do you think that's easy, a situation to come by? And Elaine says, In one instance, a boss has actually asked employees to make a change in the presentation in order to win the business of a big company. This is unethical, so how does the employee respond to the same management that he is reporting to? But that's a big question. It's to the class, I suppose, and okay, so that just says it's corruption. Who is corrupt? The manager. Okay, I think you're moving slowly to the point. Now, this case is a case of motivated blindness. I didn't want to say this outline, but it's a case of motivated blindness. The manager is not doing enough. The manager is not doing enough. So because the manager is gaining something out of it, you're aware the entire company doesn't know this, but that particular manager knows this. So he decides not to follow up. He can follow up. It's not difficult for a manager to follow up and check whether the other clients have received the email. You can even call them on the phone. But he has not done this, which means because of the personal profit, maybe it's like an allegation, but if you read the case properly, this is something coming, somebody is profiting out of it. And no normal right-thinking manager is going to sit comfortably knowing that your clients have overpaid and then they're not responding. You're going to, try to follow up and see what's happening on the other side. And Pio says mistakes might happen at times, but addressing it should be a part of clean objectives, I suppose. What is the clear objectives? Okay. So how do you think we can solve this problem now? How do you think we can solve this problem? If you are the CEO of this company or the general manager of this company, and then this new accountant comes up to you and reports this case, and then there is evidence showing that this client have made double payment, what's going to be your reaction as an ethical general manager? You should first check how it happened and take necessary measures so it will never happen again. But that is what we're trying to know. What are the necessary measures? You have to be blunt and outright. First of all, let's see. So Francis says, call the payable guy at the other company and inform about the situation. That's a good step to take. Now, one question I want to ask why the others are still typing in their answers. Do you think there is any benefit to this kind of what is happening? Do you think there is any benefit at all to this company? And Joe says to contact the client how it happened, okay. Theo says bring proper statements of account in place. Okay, Saratu says and checking to see that it doesn't occur in the future. But did you think there is any benefit with what is happening to this company at the moment? And do you think there is any danger to what is happening to the company? What is the benefit and what is the danger? could be both managers of the company know about this subject. Okay, that's possible. So what are the benefits and what are the dangers to this kind of situation? This is the big question that I'd like everyone to answer. This is what marks the climax of the class. What are the benefits and what are the dangers of this kind of situation? Okay, Francis says, can keep the excess amount as advance. Okay, well, that's a solution. That's a solution. But how are you going to keep it without informing them? And Joe says the benefit, getting the money, danger. Later clients came to know that this was for the relation. Okay, anyone else? Yes, there is a danger. In long run, the company may fall in the slippery slope. That's smart, dear. Okay, I think Francis got the final answer to this question. Let's see what Saratu says before the time runs out. As the manager, he stands to gain commendation by the board or whoever is at the top of increasing their profit margin, not knowing how he did it. That's good. And the down side is when clients begin to realize this, they may not want to do business with the company again. That's perfect. So Sadatu and Francis, you got the same line. That's the perfect thing. There is a short-term benefit, but there is a long-term danger. Okay, I hope this is going to be a good lesson for us all, and I hope the class was interesting and we've learned something good out of it. So please go back to the notes and take a look again. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.